Thank you for joining us on American Medicine Today. I'm Kimberly Bermel, joined by Ethan Euchre.
Glad to be here.
And Jeff Wagstaff.
Yes, I am.
Well, we're excited because joining us is Rupert Isaacson, author of The Long Ride Home, the extraordinary journey of healing that changed a child's life. It details the amazing quest Rupert and his wife went on to help their autistic child, Rowan. So thanks for being here, Rupert.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Rupert, this is just an incredible story. Touching me in a personal way as well, because my nephew, I've mentioned it before on the show, he's 5 years old, his name is Bennett. He has autism, so anytime I see a new idea, a new therapeutic technique, anything like that, I always want to investigate it. And this, like I said, is an amazing story. Tell us a little bit about your son, Rowan. How severe was his autism, and how did a horse named Betsy start this whole journey?
Yeah, my son was pretty severe. He was diagnosed back in 2004, nonverbal, tantruming, incontinent, what a lot of people recognize as the more severe end of autism. But I'm a journalist and a good observer, and I just observed he did better outside in nature. He tantrumed less when he was on the trails outside our house, and so that's where we were all the time. Because of that, he ran towards, one day, my neighbor's mare, Betsy, and I thought, my God, he's going to get killed because he threw himself under her hooves while she was there grazing. But in fact, that didn't happen. Something rather amazing happened. She bent her head to him and began to lick and chew and half close the eye. I am actually a professional horse trainer. I was keeping my son away from horses because I thought he wasn't safe. This behavior that Betsy did is a submission acceptance gesture, like a dog showing a belly, but I hadn't seen a horse spontaneously do this before. It was amazing.
Almost like Betsy was treating Rowan as a foal, right?
Right.
Totally, and modifying her behavior accordingly. And actually, you see this happen quite a lot with mammals and very vulnerable young children. He wanted to get up on her back. He would put his arms up and sort of jump. I knew her. I knew she was a quiet mare. When I put him on her back and he would just lay there body to body, all his stimming, the flapping, the rocking would stop. I had this different kid. But when I started riding with him in the same saddle, I got my first expressive speech. We were walking down towards a pond on her back, and a big blue heron got up and flapped away, and he said, "Heron." I didn't know he knew that word. I was like, oh my gosh, the door into his mind is open, and we were away, and that's where it began.
What made you travel all the way to Mongolia, and what was that trip like?
The reason is because from the day that I realized that Rowan was speaking on the back of the horse, I basically lived in the saddle with him. And I taught him not just to speak up there, but literacy. I would paint letters on trees, and we'd put them together and sing songs from The Lion King and paint the letters of the characters on the trees. He learned to read. With Mongolia, and the reason we did that was because my day job is I'm a journalist. I work in human rights, mostly in Africa. That's where my family is from. The year that Rowan was diagnosed and met Betsy, I had to bring a delegation of hunting and gathering tribes from the Kalahari Desert in Botswana to the United Nations and the U.S. State Department. Some of the guys on that delegation were trained healers in their culture. They met Rowan. They offered to, quote-unquote, work on him. And I said, sure, why not? You know, worst thing that can happen is nothing. It's really just prayer. Go for it. And to my amazement, for about the 5 days they were together, he really did lose some of his more obsessive symptoms. So I couldn't help but think, okay, radical and positive reaction to the horse, radical and positive reaction to this type of healing. Is there a place on the planet that combines these two things? Actually, yes, that's Mongolia. It's where the horse comes from. Strong system of shamanism there. Gut feeling, gotta go. So that was where our adventures began.
When you met up with this shaman, I mean, how do you just randomly find a shaman on the steppes of Mongolia?
The answer is you don't. If you're a journalist like me and you're an obsessive, exhaustive investigator, which I am, and you're already working in the world of indigenous tribes, which I was, you know, for human rights and for journalism, I sort of knew where to begin my search. I talked to friends who worked in Central Asia, and I said, is there anyone whose name sort of keeps coming up as a traditional healer? I spoke to other journalists who'd been in that area, and a name kept coming up, and it was the name of a guy called Ghost. He lives in a very, very, very remote part of southern Siberia where they herd reindeer, they live on reindeer, they ride reindeer. It's extraordinary. And the only way in there is on horseback. So we did that, and we went there, and we got there. What was extraordinary was that Ghost worked on Rowan. It took us a month to get in there for about 3 days. At the end of it, Rowan, 24 hours after coming down that mountain, did his first intentional poo and cleaned himself. And I tell you, it was like watching England win the World Cup.
So he got markedly better after having seen...
More than that, he was a different kid, but still autistic. We were not looking for a cure. Let me get this straight. I don't think there's any need to cure autism. Autism is a perfectly viable way of going through your life. I know many adult autists who have grown up to have careers, love lives, and so on. yes, if you can't speak, if you're incontinent, these sorts of things, we need to address these. But usually we can. But there's a real genius, and there are many gifts that go with autism, and we don't want to suppress those. So Rowan came back a really functional sort of autistic child, making friends with all the kids in the neighborhood and beginning his own project. The shaman of the reindeer people, they told me I had to do 3 more journeys to fix or confirm the healing. And in fact, a year later, he did begin to regress again. That was why we then went out to Africa and subsequently to Australia and subsequently here in America onto the Navajo reservation with some Native American healers. And each time there was an extraordinary leap forward.
How long did the progress last? I mean, is it still to this day what he gained he keeps?
Yeah.
On those journeys?
Absolutely. So the last journey that we did was now back in 2010, and not only has the healing lasted, but Rowan now has his own web-based television show. It's called EndangerousSafaris.com.
Rupert, you touched on something early when your son first met Betsy next door. Have you been able to investigate or learn any more between the relationship that animals tend to have a certain awareness, a certain sixth sense in dealing with any kind of a special needs child? I have seen video, I've seen it in person, where animals tend to have an awareness that we can't comprehend. Mm-hmm. Have you been able to investigate any more of that?
Yes, I have. I now have 2 programs. We run a foundation now called the Horseboy Foundation, and we have our own equine therapy approach, which is for neurocognition, called Horseboy Method. And then we have a way of doing it without horses. I'm actually sitting in New York City about to go train an autism school in the middle of Manhattan in our program called Movement Method, where we have taken all the things that you can get neurologically through this type of movement you get on a horse. So there's 2 things going on. One is obviously the relationship with a living animal, the social skills that come from that, the sensory calming of an overactive sensory system that comes with the contact of the animal, and the thing that you can't put your finger on, which is the love between a child and an animal. And we see this all the time. However, there is also something very scientific. Rowan's mother is a professor of educational psychology at the University of Texas. So we had access to a lot of neurologists and a lot of ed psych people and so on. And when we noticed that it wasn't just Rowan, but all the other kids that used to come for play dates, we were getting the same effects with them: literacy, numeracy, communication. And we realized that it was when the horse was moving in certain rhythms. And these were very balanced and rocking rhythms, like a very gentle lope or a very nice jog trot, that sort of thing. And that's where we'd really get our best results. We figured out why, at least the neurologists did. There have been quite a few studies into what we do now through different universities worldwide. And basically it's this, that the way in which the child's hips get rocked when the horse is moving in that way causes his body or her body to produce the feel-good and communication hormone oxytocin. And that calms the overactive nervous system, which is what's causing the agitation, the tantrums, and all that stuff in the kids. Once that happens, the same rocking and balancing motions activate the cerebellum. The cerebellum produces a series of cells called Purkinje cells. What they are is a series of circuits within the brain that get the different parts of the brain to communicate properly. Again, this is something that's often lacking or not well developed in autistic kids. That fires up the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is reasoning, emotional regulation, and planning. In addition, it causes your brain to produce a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically like miracle growth for the brain. It causes your brain to produce scads and scads of neurons. And finally, the vestibular system is activated, which is balance and attention. So the kid is in this ideal position suddenly to both receive and retain information. And when we realized this, we thought, oh my gosh, well, most kids don't have access to horses, and even Rowan is not on the horse 90% of the time. Could we not do this on the trampoline? Could we not do this on a swing? Could we not do this on our shoulders, etc.? We thought, actually, we can, and we can teach him that way. So we started to homeschool, and now we teach parents and school districts all over America, all over the world, how to do this. It's called Movement Method.
Tell us where people can find out more about the Movement Method, specifically parents of children who fall on the autistic spectrum, please.
Parents, you can do this yourself. You do not need to hire expensive therapists. You can break free from that. Go to kidsmustmove.com. That's our website. Download the home course that you can do on there. Also, if you buy the book, The Long Ride Home, you can get it on Amazon. It's detailed how we developed it in there, and all the proceeds from that go to help autism families get free services.
And we spoke off air, Rupert. That's one of the big things with my brother and his son is that my brother's a firefighter. He's a civil servant. He doesn't make a lot of money, and his wife works at home to take care of their child. So I mean, he's working three jobs to pay for therapies.
She can take over the kids' education. She can take over
and they could do this right
the
at
kids'
home.
therapies in a way that she can become so competent that if she decides to hire somebody, they have to be at least as good as her. That feeling of helplessness and that feeling of, oh my gosh, we sort of are over a barrel here being held to ransom, all these mega expensive therapies. Any autism parent listening knows exactly what I'm talking about, how expensive this is. This can end.
Well, thank you. You were so fortunate to have the job you do and your wife for having the job that she does to put everyone together to be able to come up with this movement method
Yeah.
and shedding light on it. Yeah, it's so important.
And we're very lucky. We've had some amazing mentors at different universities helping us to continue to. So it's a constantly developing thing.
That website again is kidsmustmove.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.